Today we're talking about assessments and what they are, just a basic overview. Today's objectives, we're going to be we're going to compare and contrast some of the formative assessments, I want you guys to be able to give examples of it and explain how to use them to customize learning in classrooms. Some of the stuff we'll be going over next week and using the book as more of the guide for that. But just basically, what are assessments? What do you guys think assessments are?
To see if the students are learning
Okay.
and meeting the objectives.
What about you, Jay?
Kind of the same thing, to see if, how well they're retaining what you're teaching them.
Okay. So that's part of it. It's being able to retain stuff and seeing how things go and how your students are learning. But it's also collecting that information and using it to help your students perform skills, get their attitudes right. We write objectives in 3 domains, correct? We have we have an affective, a cognitive, and then knowledge, or psychomotor. So affective measures, what's affective?
The communication, like how well they work together.
Okay. How they feel and that part. Cognitive is knowledge. And then psychomotor is the performance piece, right? So the purpose of the assessment, it guides and directs your assessment or your instruction. It moves students into their own, it provides students information on their progress. So throughout a semester, you'll get quizzes, right, as students. That lets you kind of know where you're at in the class. But the quizzes serve a purpose for a teacher too. What do quizzes serve a purpose as a teacher?
To see if they're actually learning and like they have that
Right.
information.
Right.
They're doing their job.
You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Assessments also motivate students, because when do you study? When do you guys normally study?
A couple days before.
A couple days or a couple hours, or
No,
the night before you start. But it also motivates students, is what the assessment. Oh, I got a test coming up. I really have to start studying, right? Has that ever gone through your head? Yeah. Okay. So that's a motivating factor for assessments. Objective information for grading purposes. Do you have PE metrics with Dr. Morgan? Has he gone over PE metrics? No? Okay. We'll talk a little bit about PE metrics. But basically, assessments are something that you use objectively to say yes or no. I like you guys, but if I gave you guys a test, I went over all the stuff, and you failed the test, I can objectively say I gave you a test and you guys didn't prepare for it. It takes that, personal stuff out of it, and it's very objective. So make judgment about the effectiveness of teaching. It helps you make a decision on teaching. It makes a judgment, are you teaching the right things? So if I gave you a test and everyone got writing objectives wrong, now that falls back on me to think maybe I'm not teaching it correctly. So I have to go as a teacher and I think about that. How can I make that more efficient? I'll give you an example for my graduate class I teach, which is on assessments. They have a lit review coming up. I assume that as graduate students they would know how to do a lit review. And when talking to them, I found out that they weren't sure how to do one. So I had to adjust my teaching to help them out and show them how to do a lit review. So that would be something that I use to judge effectiveness as well. The shape standards tie right into assessments. Physically literate individual demonstrates competency. They're demonstrating something, right? We're assessing whether they can do a variety of motor skills and movement patterns. That's the assessment piece. Physically literate student applies knowledge. So there's that cognitive piece, right? Demonstrates knowledge. So it's the psychomotor part again. Exhibits responsible personal and social behavior. That's the affective domain, right? And recognizes the value of physical activity for health, enjoyment, challenge, self-expression, and social interaction. So once again, that's all part of the process. So we just talked about this, but we assess in the following domains: cognitively, what do they know? Psychomotorly, what can they do? Affective, what are our students' feelings? How are they feeling? And then fitness, we measure, are they physically active? Yesterday, you guys were at the school, and she was measuring using FitnessGram, right? She's going to see how fit they are. And she can take that data, use it now, and then at the end of the semester, she can use that data again. Her principal might ask her, in the class of 20 students, like, how are they growing? How can I show growth? So say she did all her fitness testing, there's 20 kids in there, 15 were in the healthy fitness zone. What percentage is that? 15 out of 20. Come on, this is simple math. So that's 15 over 20. Let's break that down. 3 over 4. What percent is 3/4? 75%. There we go. All right. So at the beginning of the semester, 75% of our students are in the healthy fitness zone. And she realizes that, but maybe she'll see what's the one thing that's keeping them out of the healthy fitness zone. And maybe she focuses on that. Maybe it's the push-ups. Their upper body strength's not strong enough. And she'll take a look and she'll say, okay, out of all these 5, all 5 of them are missing the healthy push-ups in the healthy fitness zone. So what would she have? Should she be working on? Teaching them how to improve upper body strength. Very good. So maybe you add push-ups, you add some different stuff on there. So that's what you use that for. So at the end of the semester, maybe now instead of 15 students, maybe you add 3 more, so 18 students now are in the healthy fitness zone. So now you can say you've moved up how many percent? What percentage? Come on, you guys can do this.
What was it again?
18 over 20. Break it down.
90.
Really? You gotta figure that out.
Hey, I did it on the thing.
So 90%. So that's 90%. So but what percentage increase is there? What percentage of growth? 15%. Good. See? No calculator needed. Look at that. So at the end of the semester, you could say students improved 15%, have 15% growth, or whatever. Now, what if there was only 10% in the healthy fitness zone? And then, so that means there was only 2 people in the healthy fitness zone, and then you were able to get 10 in there. So your healthy fitness zone grew by 40%. Does that sound right? It moves from 10% to you have a class with 40% in the healthy fitness zone. So 2 different types of assessments. So you're going to hear a lot of this terminology when you're teaching. formative assessment and summative assessment. Have you heard these terms before?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Where?
In
When?
other classes.
Okay. So a formative assessment. Informal assessments designed to obtain knowledge. These are assessments that you do. You're not necessarily doing them for grades. You're just trying to see if your students can do something. This is a type that you direct your student, that you can direct your teaching with. You know, each week you close out your class. You ask, instead of asking one student, you ask the class. You do different things. Now I'm going to talk about that in a minute, about why you ask the class versus one person. But the summative assessments are assessments that are intended to affect the grades. That's the final exam, right? Here's the final exam. This is part of your grade. You know, this is 50% of your grade is this final exam. It's a summative to see what's going on. When I was in school, we had to take gymnastics. And for gymnastics, we had 50 items of gymnastic skills and 50 items of a test, a written test. And that was our grade. So what percent was, what was the teacher looking for? He was looking for half psychomotor skills, right? And then half cognitive skills. So some of the psychomotor skills were easy. Forward roll, cartwheel. But then there were some that were tougher, like pommel horse or rings or a ring dismount. So like this was the gymnastics coach at Temple. So it's a big school. And you had to do this kind of stuff. But that was his summative assessment. You could either do it or not do it. So, but these are the type of things. They're assessments of learning. It's the post-testing skills. So he taught us all these skills, and then we had to go back and do them. Final presentations. So maybe at the end of the semester here, I have you guys show me your final presentation on your class, and you get to tell me about your student growth. Portfolios. Teaching has a lot of portfolios in it. And you know, at the end of the semester, you'll have to show this or that. A fitness log. So what if we're doing a weight training class? And we want to see if students are actually doing anything. You know, so they have to keep their training log. The final exam. We talked about that. These are assessments used to determine student grades by the end of the year. PE metrics. So I imagine Dr. Moore, he used to go over this in 404.
Oh, it looks sort of familiar.
It looks sort of familiar.
We did something like this last week. Like,
With Dr. Morgan?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So with the video camera?
He didn't show us anything.
Okay. So PE metrics is based, like you set up a video camera and you record your students doing the skills, and then you go back and you take a look at it. But it's the same kind of thing, like you're looking at different parts of something. So you guys had 443.
Yeah.
And you had to do the TGMD. So it had different components of it where you would look and you're trying. The idea behind it was for you to do it and see where the students were deficient and kind of help them increase their skills. I don't know if it always worked, but you know, that's the idea. That's the reason we had you do it. We're not going to do this, but this takes you to, oops. That would take you to a link where you have a basketball quiz. But summative assessments ask the question, is a student able to progress to the next part of class? So you guys take your classes in progression here. And, you know, one of the big things here is, are you ready to move up to the next class? You're going to leave here. I have to make sure you're ready to go into student teaching. Are you prepared to be student teachers? Because that's your next step. So the summative assessment will have to be one of the dictating things. And that's one of the questions I would have to ask. Are you ready to move up to the next level? Ideally, you will be, and hopefully you will be, but that's what a summative assessment does. Formative assessments are a little bit different. These are assessments, and they might hear them say assessments for learning. It gives feedback. It gives instant feedback. It lets you see what's going on and everything else. So the formative assessments, these do learning, and they provide teacher feedback, and they give information on student progress, kind of what we're talking. They help drive your teaching. You see where things are, maybe they're not quite getting something. You're going to go back and you're going to help them out. Examples, pre-skills. So we're doing pre-testing. And when you start your unit, we're going to work on pre-skills test and post-skills. Because even when you student teach, you're going to have to be able to do this kind of stuff. So these are student learning objectives. So the student learning objective may be able to do fitness skills, this and that, and then it's this, this, and this. And you want to be able to show that growth. Like I said, the healthy fitness zone. Or at the beginning of my unit, my students, only 5 are proficient in soccer skills. But by the end of the unit, we've increased to 15. So does that show that you're teaching effectively? They're starting to learn, right? They're learning something. Peer assessments. Peer assessments are, so next week, Charlene, you're going to stick around and you're going to watch Jacob teach, and you're going to give him feedback. Jacob, you're going to go and you're going to watch Charlene teach, and you're going to give her feedback. That's a peer assessment. Self-assessment. After your lesson, after you teach next week, I'm going to give you guys a reflection paper. And you're going to have to fill out the parts of that reflection. That is a self-assessment. You're assessing how you did. Now, what's the problem with the self-assessment?
You could either like bash yourself really hard,
Okay.
like reflections, or well, that's what I.
Right. Or maybe you don't realize you're doing something wrong. Right. So, that's. Did Dr. Morgan talk to you about videotaping?
He
mentioned it. So you guys you'll record, and you're going to analyze your teaching.
Oh yeah.
So, but that's a self-assessment too. That's a self-reflection, because, and it's a very objective one, because you're management. Okay, you're hitting the management button until it stops, till your management time's over. So at the end of that, you're able to see how much time was done in management, how much time was transition, how much time you spent giving feedback, and everything else. And then exit slips. So before you leave today, I need everybody to write down the answers to my questions. And we're going to talk about exit slips because you guys are going to each design your own for next week when you leave your class. So what I'm going to have you guys do for your class next week is you guys are going to do one lesson plan together. Why am I doing that? Well, because you're doing 3, Louis is doing 3. So you're going to write the stations out on a lesson plan. So we can start practicing writing them out. And that way, you guys are all going to teach the same lesson. How you 3 are teaching it may be a little bit different. Your teaching styles may be a little different. So you're going to have the general stuff, but how you manage the class, because that's really the real important thing right now. I want to see you guys managing classroom management. Because the content stuff comes. You can gain content knowledge. The management's the most important thing. And that's why I had you guys do these. I want them typed. So you have them out and typed out.
Oh, you wanted it typed?
I want it typed.
Oh, shoot.
All right. But formative assessments are used to make instructional decisions to improve learning. So here's an example of a pre-skills test. This is looking at throwing to an object. It has participates actively. What's the problem with participates actively?
What's the, wait, can you say it again? Sorry.
What if I say participates actively? What's that mean? What's that mean to you?
Like they're doing their best and you can see like that they are trying the skills.
How do I know they're doing their best though?
I feel like you can kind of see it because some kids will just like go through the motion.
Right. Okay.
So,
It's a very subjective thing, just to keep that in mind. Right? Participates actively. How long do you have to participate actively for? So if I was going to give that a rubric, so if we're going to make that rubric, what do you think that rubric could be? Participates actively. What would be 4? You get the most points for.
what did you say that again?
So if I want to do a rubric for participates actively, what would be the top? Participates actively. How can we make that a little bit meatier?
For throwing an object at a target?
We're just going to do the first column there, A1.
Oh.
Participates actively. Everyone participates actively. But if we want to assign a number to that,
Oh.
so let's do 4, 3, 2, 1. 4 is the most active, 1 is the least active. How do you think we could word that?
I guess 4 would be like participates throughout the full class period.
Okay.
Like the entire class period.
The entire class period. So now we have a set time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the entire class period will be the lowest.
Doesn't participate at all.
Doesn't participate at all. That'd probably be 0, right? So we have all the time and none of the time. So 4 and 0. We have 1, 2, and 3 to go. So let's go 3. What would 3 be? So 3 is the midpoint between 4 and 0. Right? So we have 1, 2, or 4, 0, 3. 4 is the most active. Okay. For about 50% of the time, right?
Yeah.
So if we wanted to go to 3, right? This is 2 points. So 4 and 3. So 3 would be
Most of the time.
most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what would you say for 1?
Sometimes.
Some. For less than half the time. Some of the time. A little bit of the time. Right. So these are things I want you to think about, though. That's why I have you guys going over this stuff now. Okay? So here's an example of a peer assessment. You can't really see it. A little bit better up there than on my screen, but this is an example of a peer assessment. I may give you guys a basketball. I may give you this paper and say, okay, I used to use this one with my students. Back then we had flip video cameras. You probably don't even know what they are, but they used to be these little video cameras that look about the size of an iPhone, and they didn't really take off, but the school ordered them, so we had them. But you can record just like an iPhone. It was before iPhones were really, really popular. So you could record it and then play it back. And you could I can show Jacob. I could be like, Jacob, I'm your peer. We're doing a peer assessment and you're doing the jump shot. Maybe your shooting elbow wasn't near your body, so maybe you did the shot and you just kind of like threw it up there. Instead of keep the shot close by, keep your elbow. And I could go back and I could show you that. And right there, what I do is I check it off in trial 1 and trial 2. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So that's what the peer assessment is. This is something I used as an affective thing. Miss Erickson uses one. Jacob, you took pictures yesterday, so you have a picture of it. So remember 4-3. Can you pull up the picture?
Oh, the stuff she had on her.
Yeah. Would you actually send me that picture, Jacob? Thank you. I thought I took a picture of it. I didn't. I think I was going to ask her for a copy of that. But this is what I used to have where I taught. This was from my gym. And I had the students self-assess as they left. It's based on model of teaching responsibility from Hellison, where you're trying to become independent learners and independent. So 4 is you encourage the student, you shared equipment, helped other classmates. But all 4 levels, and at the end of the day, students would
Or send this again.
just email it to me. I'll give you my number too because you guys need to know it, but I'm not going to give it to you until I'm done recording. Because if something comes up at school, and Ms. Erickson will text me too, but I want you guys to let me know. Here's FitnessGram. The FitnessGram assessment, if you look at it, it's the pre-test, and then they have the goal. So it's another way, and then the post-test will be there. So it's another way to assess to see if they know how to get to the goal. And then down here, choose a test and explain one thing that you could do to help meet your goal for that test. Now you have to think and really process everything. Still with me? So compare and contrast. So formative versus summative. Formative assessments, quizzes, observations, T-charts, Venn diagrams. Do you know what Venn diagram is? Let's check and make sure. You know what a T-chart is?
Yeah.
A chart that looks like a T. There you go. So it looks like a little T. You have one thing here and one thing there. And we're going to talk. I want to talk about this a little bit if we have time today, but just to give you guys a little bit more. But then you have the summative stuff, the state assessments, the finals, and the chapter tests, all that kind of stuff. Summative. But they can both use for student feedback. They assist in future lesson planning. So what are we going to do now? All right. We have all this information. But what are we going to do? We're just going to like sit around? No. You want to know what to do. Take this FitnessGram stuff. Okay. We see where they're at. We want to refocus our teaching. We want to take the test and explain how to do it, how to improve, show the growth that goes on in there. So we take that stuff. The next one's an example of a teacher using that data. Mr. Simon, he's a middle school teacher. He saw that 8th grade had a drop in PACER score for 2 years in a row. 8th grade is dropping. And he's trying to figure it out. The 6th and 7th grade, they've increased each year. So after doing some reflection and taking a look and seeing what it is, he found that 8th grade has PE one day less. So they're not getting it as much. And when they are getting it, they're not as active. And he's also noticed behavior problems are increasing. So he's trying to draw a correlation between the physical activity part and the student behavior. Which, if we start teaching tactically, you'll see less behavior issues because people are moving. Where do behavior issues happen a lot? Most of the time.
Like, are you like home wise?
No, in your class.
Class?
In your class.
Oh, when they aren't like moving and stuff, like if they're in the same for too long.
Yeah. Hold the ball, hold the football. What do they start doing with the football? Start playing with it. Start picking at it. Balls at their feet. Start kicking around, or somehow it rolls away. Oh, I don't know how to. If they're using it, they are not going to be goofing around. That's what this tactical approach is really all about. So back, I had people take a quiz earlier, and you take that data and you transfer it. You say, okay, where are the weak points? It helps you guide where you need to go. So one thing, final thought here is to fix your students. Don't fix your students. Try to fix yourself first. A lot of time teaching, teachers always try to fix their students. Sometimes teachers need to be fixed. You know, they make the poor student good and the good superior. So sometimes you have to focus on all of your students and how you can work with them and how you can help them. All right? So you have to make the adjustments to help your students. It may take 15 different ways to explain the same thing, but you have to make that decision to be the one to help.